Bigfoot stomping through the pines, aliens sending secret signs, EVPs in the dead of night, ghosts dancing in the pale moonlight. Paranormal form, what we bring it to ya. Truth behind the veil, gotta pursue ya. Talking about the strange, the freaky, the weird. Fearless, we dive wherever you see it. Portal opens in the woods so deep. Creatures crawl from a timeless sleep. Lights in the sky, they flicker and blaze. Signals from beyond these earthly days.
All right.
All right. Good evening.
It's Thursday.
We
have a guest.
Yes, we do.
And this is going to be a great guest. So thanks everybody who's already popped in and getting ready for this, because I think this is going to be a great show.
I think we're going to be talking about Dogman, Bigfoot, and anything else he wants to talk about.
Yes.
Any of his experiences.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in Dogman because, what's up, Steve? I'm interested because I'd like to learn more about Dogman.
Yeah.
I could say I'm not too caught up with it. And he's had thousands of people who've come on and thousands,
maybe more,
and even more. Yeah. I think I was listening to one of his shows, and I think it was over a year old, and he said that he had taken over, I think it was over 3,000 or 4,000 witnesses statements that he talked to and stuff on the show. So it's awesome.
His name's Vic Cundiff, and he has
hey Jason,
he has 3 or 4 YouTube channels, right?
Yes.
So, and Vic's been fascinated by cryptids and things that go bump in the night for as long as he can remember.
Yes, Stephen.
His interest in Dogman Encounters began in 2007 when he spoke with his first eyewitness. And since then, he has interviewed countless individuals who they've had encounters with these creatures, sometimes receiving as many as 7 or 8 new eyewitnesses daily.
Is that not crazy?
Through dogmanencounters.com. So his work focuses on helping Dogman eyewitnesses process and to come to terms with their experiences. And he is the host of, like I said earlier, several podcasts dedicated to cryptids, including Dogman Encounters Radio, My Bigfoot Sightings, Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, My Paranormal Experience, and his fictional series called Dogman Tales, which I listened to some of it earlier, and it's wild. It's amazing, the story. Yeah, it may not be real, but it's good stories. So we're going to bring him on, Mr. Vic Cundiff.
How you doing, Vic?
Hey guys, doing really good. How about you?
Oh, doing great. Doing great.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good.
So before we start asking the customary, questions, I was watching something that you was on, and you said something that was funny to me because, we started our first podcast in 2012 and it was on a little thing called Blog Talk Radio. And I heard that, that you had kind of got your start there too. And that's pretty neat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Back in 2007, I was asked to come on the show and be a co-host. And that's when it all started right there. Good old Blog awesome. Talk.
Yeah.
Blog Talk Radio. We started out with a cell phone.
Yeah. With a cell phone and Blog Talk Radio. That was it.
The good old days.
Yeah, but it is.
So Jason Finch says he has his very own Dogman Encounters Radio hooded sweatshirt, and he have his Bigfoot Sightings podcast hooded sweatshirt. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Got some fans in here, Vic.
Nice Wash says he's a cool dude.
Well, thanks for the good words, guys. I appreciate it, but you're going to make me nervous now.
I've listened to you on quite a few of your shows, and you always great shows.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening.
So, I guess we could start off with the customary kind of what got you into not necessarily, well, I guess eventually got you into doing the podcasting thing, but what got you really interested in, say, Dogman and all of these cryptids and stuff like that?
Well, I've always been interested in things that go bump in the night. And I guess that all started, the genesis was where I just focused on Sasquatch because, Sasquatch, when it comes to cryptids, that's the one that's most in your face. But as time went along, I found myself co-hosting that podcast called Campfire Shadows back in 2007 and 2008. And back then, Jim Bear Grant and Tim Coonbo Baker, they were regulars on the show. Well, one weekend they had an outing and they took some people with them. And I don't know who, I can't remember who it was because this has been years and years, but somebody in their group saw what they called a dog-faced booger. And when I heard them say dog-faced booger, I knew that the term booger is an appellation for a Sasquatch that a lot of Southerners use. But what's a dog-faced booger is what I was thinking. So after the show, I can't remember if it was Bear or Coonbo that I asked about that, but I found out that they're talking about a dogman, what's called a dogman. So I just did some digging into it, and it wasn't long before I got to thinking, if you have a bad Sasquatch encounter that you need help with, you can almost go to your corner grocery store and find someone to help you. But if you have an encounter with one of these dog men, where do you go to get help? Who do you talk with? So I thought, there's a real need here. Now, mind you, it wasn't until 2014 that I brought dogmanencounters.com online. But once I did bring it online, before I knew it, I had people contacting me from all over and eventually from all over the world. I've actually spoken with eyewitnesses, Dogman eyewitnesses from every continent except Antarctica now. So, yeah, people think that this is kind of focused on America, on the U.S., but it's not. It's definitely a worldwide phenomenon.
See, that's it's crazy because it really hasn't been but the last, I don't know, 3 or maybe 4 years that in my mind, I remember starting to hear about Dogman. And to know that it's been going on for much earlier than that is crazy for me. What do you think that these creatures or these beings are?
Well, that's $1 million question right there.
Yes.
I'm not that convinced that we don't have several different kinds of dogmen. What I'm talking about is not dogmen that look this way or look that way, but dogmen that are supernatural in origin. But then you've got another kind that might be test tube dogmen that the government created. And then you might have another kind that are actually just flesh and blood creatures that are out there trying to scratch out a living in the woods, pun intended. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Now, that's just a guess. I really don't know. No one can tell you for sure what they are, but that's just a guess.
I know David was saying we hadn't really heard of Dogman for, maybe, like you said, 3 or 4 years ago. We were at the Bigfoot conference in Gatlinburg about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like we just got back this week from one too in Gatlinburg. It's pretty cool.
Awesome place.
But we were there and it was after the conference and we were standing out front on the main strip in Gatlinburg, and these girls come up and said, "What about the Dogman?" I was like, "What? A Dogman? I had never heard of a Dogman." Now, if she had said werewolf, I'd have said, okay. But I never heard of anything called a Dogman.
Yeah. We started looking into it and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Beast of Bray Road.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started with for me, And
then you got the LBL.
Yeah, and then the LBL.
So Stephen would like to know if you know how many Dogman reports are there from Tennessee.
Oh, I don't. I couldn't even venture a guess on that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, I've spoken with so many eyewitnesses over the years. It's just a blur. But I can tell you that Tennessee is definitely one of the hottest spots in the U.S. right now. It's been that way for a long time. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, maybe I'd say the western part of West Virginia, and just in that region there. Yeah, that's definitely the hottest area of the country. Back in the 80s and into the 90s a bit, you're talking about Michigan, Wisconsin, maybe parts of Minnesota. Those were the hottest spots. But then again, that's where all this was brought to light. That's where Dogman really got their fame, was the Michigan Dogman, the Beast of Bray Road. You can't have an encounter if you don't have an eyewitness.
Right.
Well, a lot of people, they were seeing these things all over, but they didn't have a name to hang on it. So they just kept it to themselves. But in Michigan, in Wisconsin, when those stories started coming out about the Michigan Dogman, about the Beast of Bray Road, then now you have people coming forward. Okay, well, yeah, that matches what I saw. So that's why those places were quote unquote the hot spots back then, even though obviously encounters had to be happening all over, even back then.
Right.
Yeah. So I know that we had a lot of, we had a gruesome murder there in Land Between the Lakes that was attributed to the Dogman, I believe.
Yep.
Have you had any specifics from there that you can remember?
Oh, I'm sorry. Any specifics?
Reports
Land Between the Lakes.
of the Land Between the Lakes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've spoken with people who had encounters there. Actually, the first person I spoke with back in 2007 about his encounter, he actually lived right on the border, right near the border of the LBL. And yeah, he had one of the most frightening Dogman encounters that's ever been shared with me.
Wow.
Wow.
That's wild.
Yeah.
We're just down the road a little
Yeah,
ways
we're
from
not
there.
that far from LBL. Yeah. And we want to go there this year and do an investigation.
That's a good place to do it.
Yeah. if you're going to have an encounter, I think, at least as far as I've been looking into here lately, that's one of the best places to maybe have one, because there seem to be a lot of sightings there.
So, I know your goal is to help people. How do you go about helping these people that have these sightings, and how do you help them process it? Just with the stories, listening.
Well, when you speak with as many eyewitnesses as I have over the years, you have to notice patterns. One of the biggest patterns you notice when you do what I do is people who have encounters with these guys, if they had an experience with something else, like a horse or whatever, that was really similar, they'd be able to work their way through it, even if that experience was as traumatic as the Dogman encounter was. But because they're so knocked off of their base with fear, and understandably so, because of their encounter with this really frightening looking cryptid, they can't reason their way through it to see the forest for the trees, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So my job, what I do is I just basically, I point out things to them that because of the trauma, the PTSD, they've overlooked, and just basically make sense out of the whole experience and make sure they understand when you see something like that, that's that frightening, and especially with something like Dogman that know how to really push our buttons. I mean, it's gonna go right to the reptile brain in a human and just cause just primal fear in you. Well, of course, depending on the situations. If you're in a car, if you're on the freeway or whatever, then maybe not so much. But when you're on the ground and it's on the ground and it's right there and everything, then yeah, it's going to push those buttons in you. But Dogmen, their physical capabilities, in some ways, their mental capabilities supersede our own, to the point where you're not going to get away from a Dogman that's got it in for you. And I just point out things like that the reason why we're having this conversation right now is because it didn't want to hurt you. If it wanted to do whatever to you, it would have done it. It had every capability of doing that to you, but it didn't do that for the best possible reason, because it didn't want to hurt you. And I just really emphasize the fact that, okay, you are talking with me now because the most terrifying looking creature you've ever seen in your life, that looked like a mindless killing machine that would rip you apart as soon as look at you, he let you go without a scratch. So you have yet in your life to encounter a bloodthirsty, mindless, monstrous killing machine that will rip you apart as soon as the opportunity presents itself. And just basically bringing things like that to their attention and making sense out of that experience. It's not like it's a magic bullet that makes it so the people who've really been traumatized, as soon as we hang up, they're fixed. But as long as they work on the things that I asked them to work on and they remember what I was asking them to remember, then yeah, they're golden. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time that I've spoken with an eyewitness who was really in a bad way, but at the start of the conversation, but by the end of the conversation, they're laughing and having a great time and they're good to go. They're not totally fixed. They still need to think about what we talked about and really let it sink in, but they're good at that point. They're not great, but they're good and on their way to being great. So yeah, I mean, I can't believe that I'm in a position to be able to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. You got any questions?
Well, we have actually Matthew Hepworth did ask a pretty good one. He says, why do you think Dogman is attracted to cornfields?
Well, when you're talking about something as big as a dogman can get, very few of them seem to be running around 12 feet. They must not be mature yet, and quite a few are females. But yeah, the males, certain varieties of the males can top out at around 12 feet, apparently. If you're that big, I mean, it's hard to find a better place to get good cover and hide than a cornfield. And that can be, we can be talking about hiding for different purposes, maybe to jump a deer or to stay out of the limelight. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons why they might want to hide, but yeah, I mean, a cornfield would offer a lot of advantages. Maybe that's why, but anyone who tells you that they definitely know, they know definitively the answer to that question, yeah, they're just blowing smoke because we don't know for sure.
Right. Yeah, we have a good friend of ours, Matt Sieber, from East Tennessee Bigfoot, and he says something similar. You know, he goes, "There's no experts." He says, "When someone tells you they're an expert, they're lying to you." You know, so
That's right.
You know, I think what you said on the cornfields though is right, because you know we have a lot of them here in East Tennessee, and there's one thing that you have to worry about when you're going by a cornfield in a car is deer jumping out at you, because they tend to like to lay in that corn. A, it's food, but B, you know, especially this time of the year and stuff, there's babies with them. And so it's a good place that they can lay down and be out of sight of everything, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's not just deer. I mean, raccoons, or I should say swamp kitties, they love going into cornfields too, and other critters too. So it's a great place for them to hang out and to just lay low, make a living.
Yep. Sit there and just, what's on the buffet tonight?
Yeah. I usually go into a cornfield just to pick the field corn. I like field corn.
Do you?
Yeah.
Huh. I've got a bunch of where I work.
Yeah.
So, in the time that you've been doing, you know, all this stuff, have you always been doing the Dogman, or have you, did you start off doing like Bigfoot and stuff like that first?
Well, when I was co-hosting Campfire Shadows in 2007 and 8, yeah, I was just solely focused on Sasquatch. But after I left that show in 2008, I had a hiatus there all the way up until 2015. That's when I brought the show, Dogman Encounters, online.
Okay.
And then in 2016, I brought Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio online. But understand the Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, that's not available for listening on YouTube. To listen to Bigfoot Eyewitness, you have to use your favorite podcast app. But yeah, you name the podcast app out there and Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio is on it. So it's still really easy to listen to. And I focus more on the podcast side of things anyway. I'd rather have people listen to my shows on their favorite podcast app than YouTube.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I did focus on Dogman first, but my focus has always been on Dogman, and my focus has never been on Sasquatch. Yeah, I happen to produce 2 Sasquatch podcasts, but no, I don't help Sasquatch eyewitnesses come to terms with their encounters if they've had traumatic encounters, but I do help Dogman eyewitnesses. So yeah, my focus always has been on Dogman and always will be, but I happen to produce 2 Sasquatch podcasts, having said that.
So Stephen in the chat room, he said, what about a lot of the encounters that happen around graveyards and even those areas of old native areas? Do you have any reports of that?
Oh yeah, there have been a lot of cases of that happening. And that kind of points to maybe there is something to the adage about these guys having a supernatural tie. Maybe a lot of these guys are supernatural beings, and that's why they're drawn to those places. But again, that's just a guess. I mean, it's a conceit to just put something out there as if it's fact when it comes to something like that and Dogman, because we really don't know definitively.
Yeah.
Right.
Could be portals. It could be just about anything. I've noticed, I've heard some Bigfoot encounters that have hosted Dogman prints. So have you heard that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've heard about that. And one of the earliest cases that I can remember hearing about someone finding a Sasquatch print and a Dogman print, they told me about seeing smaller Sasquatch prints, and then there were Dogman prints right alongside those Sasquatch prints. And they were of the mindset, why would a Dogman move with a juvenile Sasquatch? And I told them, I'll bet you good money it wasn't moving with the juvenile Sasquatch. I'll bet you it was stalking that juvenile Sasquatch. And that's why it looked like these 2 are moving together, but it was actually behind it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep. It was
That makes
for
sense.
lunch. Yeah.
I was hungry.
Well, I mean, I'm sure these things, eat what canines eat, and that's usually chasing down and eating a lot of meat. So Bigfoot would be a lot of meat.
Yeah.
I don't think they do. They definitely seem to be canids when you look at their features, but when you look in a dog's mouth, their carnassials, they're a compromise. I mean, dogs' carnassials, their molars, they're not designed solely for the purpose of processing meat the way an obligate carnivore's mouth is going to be. If you look at a tiger's carnassials or a lion's carnassials, they are obligate carnivores. So every tooth in their mouth is designed to process meat. Well, a Dogman's teeth, every single tooth in its head is designed to process meat. So unlike a dog, which is an omnivore, a Dogman is clearly an obligate carnivore. So yeah, they're obviously canids if we're not talking about a supernatural kind of Dogman, but
Right.
if we're talking about a flesh and blood Dogman, every Dogman that's ever been reported to me has always had it where every single tooth in its head is sharp, like I said. So that's why I have come to that conclusion that these guys must be obligate carnivores. If you wonder about that whole herbivore, omnivore, obligate carnivore thing, look at the teeth. The teeth will tell you everything you need to know about that animal's lifestyle.
Yep, that makes sense. I mean, you look at ours and, our molars and everything, and you could tell that we're omnivores. So it would make sense.
Oh, definitely. I probably shouldn't get on my soapbox about this whole type 3 thing, but it really sticks in my craw when I hear someone call them a type 3 Sasquatch, because they're clearly, look at the anatomical features on the type 3, and it's clear they're definitely not a kind of Sasquatch. Sasquatch always have fingernails and toenails. Every single type 3 has got claws on the tips of his fingers. That precludes the chance of them being a kind of Sasquatch. And people have postulated, okay, well, maybe they just are Sasquatch that were born that way. No, you don't have an animal that is an animal that normally has fingernails and toenails. You don't just randomly have a baby that's born with bone-anchored claws.
Right.
No, that's not something that you're ever going to find. You might have one that's born with arms that are shorter, slightly shorter than normal. You might have one that's born with whatever strange little quirk to its anatomy, but that right there, fingernails compared to bone anchored claws on the tips of its fingers, that's a huge jump when it comes to physiology. You're never going to find a baby born with that kind of a variation. So that right there, that precludes the chance that type 3s could be a kind of Sasquatch. And also, I'll do you one further. Every single tooth in a type 3's head, every eyewitness who's ever reported seeing a type 3, some people call them googways, some people call them face eaters, and they have other names too for them. Every single eyewitness has always reported that every single tooth in their heads was sharp. Every last tooth. Well, that right there, that precludes the chance of them being Sasquatch, because Sasquatch, if you look at their teeth, some of those guys have pronounced canines that are sharp, but every other tooth in their heads is always like an omnivore's teeth.
Right.
But a lot of Sasquatch, like type 1s, they have all their teeth look like ours, just a lot bigger. Clearly the teeth of an omnivore. But when you have type 3s, where every last tooth is sharp for processing meat, that's another anatomical feature that just rules out the possibility of them being a kind of Sasquatch. Now, I've been on my soapbox saying what they're not. People wonder if that's the case. Well, what are they? I can't tell you what they are. I can tell you what they're not, though. They're not a type of canid. They're not a type of Sasquatch. Again, what are they? I don't know. I can't tell you.
No, that's that's interesting. Especially when it comes down to, because I've never heard of the type 1, type 2, type 3. Have you, Jason?
I know he spoke of it on some prior podcasts, but it's the first time I've heard it. Yeah. From him.
Maybe you could explain that better.
Sure. This whole type thing, that's
Yes,
something that Tim Kumbo Baker created back in the day. Now, what he considers to be a type 1 Sasquatch, and it's widely considered, this type of Sasquatch I'm about to talk about is widely across the board considered to be a type 1. Type 1s, what people in the cryptid community call type 1s, I should say, Sasquatch, they're the ones that look like Patty from the Patterson-Gimlin film. They have that sagittal crest. Well, at least once they get to a certain size, they do, because a sagittal crest is a size thing. Above a certain size, if you're a primate, you're going to have that sagittal crest. But yeah, type 1s have a sagittal crest. They've got that big, ridiculously bulky build. They get quite a bit taller than what are called type 2s. Type 2s, if you ever check out, there's a website, if you do a Google search for them and us, you'll be taken to a website where they show a Neanderthal, and it is pronounced Neanderthal, not Neanderthal. The H is silent before I get blown up with a bunch of messages. But, yeah, if you go to that website by doing that Google search for them and us, you're going to see what a lot of experts consider to be about the most accurate representation of what Neanderthals look like. You see this figure holding a spear, but the representation they have has elliptical pupils like a snake. But people who've seen a lot of type 2s like Kumbo, like Bear, they say that type 2s have round pupils the way we do. They don't have those elliptical pupils like that representation of a Neanderthal does in that photo on that website. But yeah, type 2s, they have rounded heads. They're not nearly as bulky or as tall or big as type 1s. And they lend themselves to shenanigans a lot more, apparently, than type 1s. At least people who have been around their fair share of these guys, they say that. That's something that Kumbo and Bear put out there. But yeah, that's the short story on type 1s and type 2s. Now, type 3s, I guess he considered type 3s to be a kind of Sasquatch. So that's why he called them type 3s, when in fact, to accurately label them, you should go in a different direction, because they're not a kind of Sasquatch. But yeah, that's what I was telling you about as far as type 3s. That's why he decided to call them type 3s. He considered them to be a kind of Sasquatch, and I think he still does.
Yeah, that's interesting. Then taking that into consideration, because now knowing that what we all normally hear of and talk about when we're talking about Bigfoot is type 1, that type 3 definitely does not fit that bill at all.
No, it definitely doesn't. And on that scale, 1, 2, 3, that's an accurate representation of how ornery you'd expect these guys to be. Type 1s are the mellowest. Type 2, that kind of ramps it up. Type 3, that's like the top of the list as far as potential aggression.
Wonder if that's, I mean, not as far as aggression size. You see that it's funny because it seems like when you get up into, say, Alaska and stuff like that, they seem to be very aggressive. And you know, out here where we live, I don't think that they're quite as aggressive.
Yeah, they're reported to be quite a bit more aggressive up there in Alaska, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what people say.
Right. Where you've got that, what was that shipping, that village that was up there? Portlock. Yeah. Where supposedly that one was tearing people apart and they all had to leave and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, they abandoned the whole town.
Yeah. I think that's where everybody's deriving, you know, how bad these things are.
So I know you told me earlier you had, you know, some Bigfoot encounters, personal Bigfoot encounters. And if it's all right, I'd like for you to share with us if you can.
Bigfoot encounters? What Bigfoot encounters? No, I'm messing with you.
I knew I heard. I know he said.
I love it. What are you talking about?
I was about to bow my head and go, uh-oh, I messed up.
No, about 40 years ago, I was deer hunting. And the story behind that, I had that experience when I was deer hunting then. And the story behind that is I had this neighbor that was like, in the dictionary next to the phrase outdoorsman, there should have been a picture of this guy, because you name it and he had done it when it comes to the outdoors. I mean, hunting and the places he had been, and camping, hiking, all this stuff. He was quite a bit older than I was back then, but yeah, this guy was just something else. He really was. Well, he knew how much I always loved the outdoors. And one day I used to go down there and sit on his couch and he would just share experience after experience with me. And he'd share experiences that other people had had, because they knew I loved that kind of stuff, ate it up like candy. Well, one day he said, you know what, Vic, I know how much you love the outdoors and you love listening to these stories and all about my experiences. He said, why don't you get your license, your hunting license? If you do that, then he said, I'll take you to the farm with me. And he lived way out in the middle of nowhere. He said, I'll take you to the farm with me the day before opening day of deer season, and I'll take you out there and I'll show you the ropes and we'll see if you can't get yourself a deer. So I said, well, that sounds great to me. So I went ahead and did that. And before I knew it, it was time to head to his farm. So we headed to his farm and we were riding up this long lane off of the highway, or a country road. I can't remember. It's been so long, but we were just riding down this long lane that led back to the farmhouse through the woods. And then we got to this clearing. And I remember on the right-hand side of the lane, it opened up a little bit and there's this pasture. And I'm looking and there's this bay horse just on the other side of the fence. It's got his head down and he's chomping on the grass there. Well, I said something about the horse and he said, oh yeah, that's Red. He said, stay away from him. He'll kill you. I thought, okay, well, point taken. Don't need to tell me twice. So we kept on rolling down that lane, and eventually there was a spot where the woods opened up again, and there's another pasture or part of that same huge pasture. And there was another bay there that was eating, had its head down eating. I can't remember the name of that horse for whatever reason. It's been so many years, but he said, okay, that one's fine. Yeah, that's so-and-so. You can pet him if you want to. I said, okay, great. Well, we kept on rolling, and we eventually made it to the farmhouse, and we got out and headed in and got settled in. And before you know it, after having dinner, it was time to head to bed. So I went upstairs into the loft, and I went ahead and turned in after I got things ready for the next morning. Well, the next morning came bright and early. I got up and I got dressed and headed down, and we had breakfast. And before I knew it, we were heading out to the farmhouse and into the woods. So we walked into the woods, and this is big country, big hollers and everything. We walked down this big hollow, back up one, and up and down, up and down, up and down. I don't know how long we walked, but we did walk quite a bit, a good ways away from the farmhouse into the woods. Well, eventually, as we're heading down this huge hollow, he said, all right, this is your spot. Go ahead and set up here. He said, I'm going to be hunting a few ridges over, a few hollows over. He said, just remember everything I told you, and you should be fine. He said, I'll come back in right before dark and pick you up on the way back to the farmhouse. I said, all right, that sounds good. So I got down and settled in up against this huge oak tree. And the slope I was on, I was in a huge hollow about halfway down the slope of the hollow. And the slope was steep. And because it was such a deep, big hollow, I can't honestly tell you how much distance it was to the bottom of the hollow or how much distance it was to the top of it, but it was a good distance, a really good distance both ways. Well, I'm just sitting there, and before too long, the sun started coming up. And when it did, I'm looking around, getting my bearings and everything. And once it was fully up, I'm scanning, remembering everything he told me, no sudden movements or anything like that. Well, I'm just looking around, and nothing was going on. It was dead. I mean, just dead. So I'm just bored out of my mind. I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be something that's going to happen here. Not so much as a squirrel. Well, I don't know what time it was. I think it was maybe just a hair after noon. Might have been as late as 12:30. I'm sitting there with my back up against that huge oak tree. And all of a sudden, well, not huge oak tree, but a big oak tree. And all of a sudden, I hear this loud horse whinny that sounded like it was about 20 or so feet behind me. I'm thinking, oh, is that Red? Did Red follow me out here, the killer horse? And then reason set in. I'm looking around, and there's at least a foot of tree trash, of oak leaves and sycamore leaves and all sorts of leaves there that are dry as a crisp. There's no way a horse could have gotten anywhere near me without me hearing it a long way off. And then when you consider how steep the slope of that hollow was, a horse isn't going to want to navigate that unless its life was at stake. And even then, it might not try to do it. It was steep. So when I put those two things together, it really doesn't make sense that it was a horse that was literally 20 feet behind me. Well, not too long after the whinny, I heard what sounded like, well, I will call it. I heard a horse blow. Now, for people listening who don't know much about horses, one of the strange, quirky things about their anatomy is that, believe it or not, a horse cannot breathe through its mouth. The only way a horse can breathe is through its nostrils. That's just one of those strange physical adaptations that they have. Well, because of that adaptation, that's why, if you've been around horses much, you've noticed that it seems like they're obsessive about clearing their nostrils. Every time you turn around, they're clearing their nostrils. Well, when they get one crossways way up there, or maybe a bug up there or whatever, and they really want to clear their nostrils out, they do what's called a blow. A blow is when they take a deep breath and they empty their lungs, and they empty their lungs through their nostrils right now. And if you've ever been by a horse that does that and you're not expecting it, it really can scare you out of your boots. It's loud, it's violent, it's concussive. Well, I'm a big guy. I mean, I don't run across people that are my size very often at all. My lungs aren't even close to approaching the lung volume that I heard making these sounds. When I heard that blow, I've been around horses, a lot of horses, and the blow I heard, the lungs behind that blow had to be as big as a horse's lungs. So that's why I say that I'm convinced it had to be 1,000-pound Sasquatch that was literally just feet behind me that day. How long it was back there behind me? Maybe it was back there behind me since before the sun came up. I don't know. All I can do is guess on that. But that's what happened in that time. And then fast forward to probably, I can't really remember how many years it's been, but 5, 6, maybe up to 7 or 8 years ago, I guess. I was walking out in the country and I had walked up and over this arched bridge, over this creek that was out there in the area I was at. And once I made it up and over that arched bridge, I kind of zigzagged to the left and then I zigged to the right a little bit to walk through this green field. Well, the green field was up about, it was midsummer. So that green field was up about 6 feet tall. Well, because it was up about 6 feet tall, I could still see over the top of it. But since it's 6 feet tall and I'm in the green field, it really cut down my vision on what was going on at a distance on the other side of that green field. Well, I walked a distance out and decided, okay, well, I'm far enough away from the truck. I've got things to do. So I decided to head back. I turned around and started heading back, and I guess I was probably between a quarter mile and maybe 3/8 of a mile away from that arched bridge. Probably not 3/8 though, probably closer to a quarter mile away from that arched bridge. When all of a sudden I see this figure running up in the view, up and over the top of the arch of that bridge. Well, when it's at the lower parts of that arched bridge, pretty much all I could see was like head-ish, shoulders, maybe shoulders. But as it got up to the arch, then I can see pretty much all of it. Well, what really caught my attention was the way it was moving. It was kind of plucking its feet in an unnatural way as it wasn't really running. It was more of like a jogging speed, but it was swinging its arms, or maybe it was a person. What I saw was, I'll just tell you what I saw. I saw a black figure that if it was a man, I'd say it was probably my height or taller. There aren't too many guys that are taller than I am. But if it was a guy, it was a guy my height or taller who had a sweatshirt with its hood up. And the hood was pointed. There was a definitive point to his hood. You know, some sweatshirts and all, they're like that. Their hoods are like that. Mm-hmm. So it's either a guy that was my height or taller with nothing but black on, even black shoes, that had a sweatshirt hood pulled up with that pronounced point, or maybe it was a Sasquatch. I don't know, but the way it was moving, that was what I really focused on more than anything. And I'm thinking, okay, if it is a Sasquatch, I've got a limited amount of time to collect as much detail about this thing as I can. It was broad daylight, but because of the distance and everything, it was really hard to make out features, especially considering how black it was. It was black. So I just watched it run up and over the bridge in my direction onto my side of the bridge. And then once it ran down onto the ground there on the other side of that arched bridge, it turned to its right, my left, and it moved parallel at the same speed. I watched its head just move parallel on the other side of that green field until I lost sight of it. I couldn't see it anymore. I can't remember if the ground slipped away and that's why I lost sight of it, or if the green field in that area, when it disappeared, was taller than 6 feet. But yeah, I wound up losing sight of it. So I walked as fast as I could to get to the point where I could look left and down the row of that green field to try and see it. But I knew I was far enough away where once I got to the edge and had a chance to break out and look to the left, it wasn't going to be in sight. And sure enough, it wasn't. So I don't know. Did I see a Sasquatch that day? I can't tell you. I definitely did. But that might be what it was that I saw. And then there was another time I was heading down this country road when I saw this. Well, I don't know for sure that I saw it, but I think I saw what looked to me like a black leg disappearing behind a tree. So, yeah, I mean, once I got to the point where I could look behind the tree, I looked but didn't see anything. But was it my mind playing tricks on me? I don't know. It's possible, but I don't know.
Wow.
That's wild.
So 3 possible sightings.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Moment.
Yeah. I've seen him once, and I got a pretty good sight of him. I can definitively say it was a Sasquatch. And it was a big one. It was while I was driving truck, and my wife and I used to team drive. So she was in the back sleeping, and it was about 11 o'clock at night on I-90 in Washington State. And what was cool was that, I-90 that late at night is practically dead. I mean, you might see a car every once in a while, and so we're going westbound, and about 4 car lengths or so ahead of us, it's a slight fog bank to where you'd be able to see, say, the taillights of a car, but you wouldn't be able to make out what it was. And just about that far ahead of us, he just comes out of the median and comes across the interstate and then back up the other side on a big, it's like a mountain over there, but comes just right across and up before I could even get to him, doing about 65 miles an hour at the time. So I think that's what the speed limit is there. And, but he was big. I know that if I pulled over and I rolled down my window, I could have had a face-to-face conversation with him. He was big. He was massive. And that, I think, is what, after the shock of me driving for another 10 minutes, reconciling in my head, is this actually what I saw? And then coming to the conclusion that was what I saw. I still wrestle with the fact of how big he was. I mean, just how massive this thing was, but then also how agile and how fast he was. That was it was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, no, I bet it was.
So, but
I've yet to see Bigfoot. Of course, I don't get out much like David. He's been all over the country.
That's long haul truck driving. Will do that for you.
Oh, I bet it will.
So, got a question in the chat room. Stephen, he says, how often does Red Eyes come up with these Dogman encounters?
No, it comes up fairly often, but the most common color is by far and away amber. But yeah, there are quite a few eyewitnesses, credible eyewitnesses, who report seeing red eyes. Definitely. Now, there's no pattern. There's so many canards out there, ideas that don't have a shred of evidence behind them, such as if you encounter a dogman that's got red eye shine, that's a dangerous one. If you encounter one that's got amber eye shine, then you don't have to worry about it. I mean, there is no pattern. Nothing indicates that there's anything to that makes that any kind of a fact. I've spoken with credible eyewitnesses who've seen dogmen that have amber eye shine, that did things that were kind of on the aggressive side. And yeah, the same thing holds true with dogmen with red eye shine. So yeah, there's no pattern to that. That's one of the biggest problems about the whole dogman field. There's so much bad info about dogmen out there. I mean, every time I turn around, there's more bad information about them that I hear about.
Yeah.
What is some of the, we'll say, condescending information that you hear from other places that's a lot different from what you hear from your eyewitnesses that come on your show and that have talked to you or emailed you and stuff like that?
Well, I've spoken with so many eyewitnesses over the years, literally thousands and thousands of them. Like I talked about earlier in the show, I mean, it gives you the perfect opportunity to notice patterns.
Mhm.
If you speak with 4 people who've had experiences with whatever animal, then you might start to notice, in a way, somewhat in the way of patterns. But when you talk with thousands upon thousands of people who have interacted with horses, well, yeah, they're going to notice patterns and they're going to share things with you that you can take to the bank. Okay, well, I've heard this so many times shared by people who've interacted with horses. So I know that, yeah, it's a good idea. If you're going to feed a horse something, it's a good idea to keep your hand flat, keep that thumb tucked in, because there's a pattern there of horses biting your hand if you don't hold your hand just right when you're feeding them. I mean, that's an exaggeration
Mhm.
for an example there, but yeah, when it comes to Dogman, there are things that I've heard time after time after time. So yeah, that's given me a level of familiarity with these guys where I just get frustrated when I hear it put out there by people who are just literally, figuratively sticking their toe in the water when it comes to dogmen, put something out there as fact that has clearly been, I mean, just totally flies in the face of what I've heard thousands upon thousands of eyewitnesses share with me. One of the biggest things that I hear put out there that is clearly wrong is this idea that dogmen are wired to rip you apart as soon as the opportunity presents itself. If that was the case, I wouldn't have spoken with thousands upon thousands of people who were caught dead nuts to rights by one of these guys, but allowed to leave their encounter without so much as a scratch. I mean,
Right.
people that hear me say that, and they hate to hear it, because they just have it in their minds that these guys have to be dangerous. These guys have to be that way. They're just sending me message after message. Well, you can't speak with the people who've been killed by these things, Vic. So you don't know that. You shouldn't say that. Well, yeah, I can't speak with people who've been killed by dogmen. That's true. But there's a repeating pattern time after time after time, to the point where it's clear that these guys are not wired to rip you apart as soon as the opportunity presents itself. Because look at the sample size. If I'd only spoken with 10 people, 20 people who've had encounters with these guys, then yeah, that's not nearly a big enough sample size to come to that conclusion. But when you speak with thousands upon thousands of people who are caught dead nuts to rights by one of these things, or more than one of these things, but allowed to leave without any problems, any scratches, or not a single hair in their heads being harmed, then that right there definitively demonstrates the fact that, okay, well, these guys, they can't be wired to rip you apart as soon as the opportunity presents itself. Because with that sample size, you would notice a lot of people who were attacked. I mean, look at fire ants. If you put your hand on a fire ant mound, I mean,
You're getting it.
1,000 times out of 1,000 times, they're going to light you up.
Yep.
You know why? Because they actually are wired to be dangerous, and they are wired to attack as soon as the opportunity presents itself. That's a scientific test that you can clearly do and get a definitive answer on. With dogmen, the sample size, I mean, I've spoken with thousands upon thousands of people who have told me, credible people who have told me that, yeah, they were in a very compromising circumstance where the dogman had them dead to rights, but it let them go without harming them. So that's why I say that about dogmen. What really it boils down to is there are shows out there who they don't have enough draw to be able to air a new episode of their show, of their podcast every week with a new dogman eyewitness. And they've decided they want to focus on dogmen as a topic because dogman is kind of like the hot cryptid now. Well, since they don't have enough draw to bring in enough guests to have a new dogman eyewitness every week, what they'll do is they know that fear sells. They'll make up a story about a dogman that's dangerous and it's trying to kill people, or it is killing people. They'll put it out there. It's actually a creepypasta story that they put out there as being a factual story. And when they do that, that gets them more views, but clearly we're talking about somebody who values money more so than the truth, which really is a shame. Now, I don't have any trouble at all with people who want to put out creepypasta stories about dogmen, but don't present them as being true. I mean, present them as what they are. They're fiction. That's why I'm saying what I am. And I still not only produce Dogman Encounters, which has true stories, but I also recently started producing a podcast that has fictional Dogman stories called Dogman Tales. Now, Tales is not spelled Tails. It's spelled Tales because they are tales. It's a group of fictional stories. So yeah, you can do both. When I put it out there that I was going to start producing Dogman Tales, I got the most ridiculous messages. I thought you were the guy who wanted to focus on helping eyewitnesses come to terms with their encounters. I thought helping eyewitnesses with their encounters is important to you. Well, yes, it is. Who's to say that I can't help eyewitnesses, but also create fictional stories about dogmen? I don't present those fictional stories as being true. I don't present those fictional stories on the same channel as Dogman Encounters. They're separated. I've had tons and tons of people say, well, you can't make fictional stories if you also produce a show with true stories about dogmen. And I just want to just wrap them across the chops and tell you, look, dummy, so according to you, I can't have an F-350, a 1-ton F-350 in the driveway to haul a fifth wheel trailer if I want to also have a Toyota Camry for going to the grocery store to get my groceries and all.
That's right.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
That's funny.
Some of these people, I swear.
Well,
we have Steven in the chat room that says that I guess the encounter with kids running into a dogman in an old abandoned plant building is his favorite.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the guest's name was Matt.
Okay. That's interesting. I might have to start listening to these.
They're good. So we've come up on an hour. That's basically on Thursdays we do our hour show. I know we got a lot. We could talk about a lot more stuff, but maybe we can schedule one of our 2-hour shows and you can come back on. But if you want to give out your information to your channels and tell everybody, all our listeners, where they can find you, we'll definitely put it on the.
Sounds like a lot of them already know.
Yeah, everybody knows it. So, I mean, if somebody's out there that don't know,
I'm sure,
and we'll definitely put the links to you in this show, and so if you want to go ahead and do that,
sure. Well, the shows are really easy to find. If you wanted to find Dogman Encounters Radio, you can listen to Dogman Encounters just like all of my other shows on your favorite podcast. If you've had a Dogman encounter that you want to report to me because you want to be a guest on the show or you need help with it, then go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you do that, then I'll be more than happy to contact you so we can schedule a phone consultation, and then we'll take it from there. If you want to listen to Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, then you can listen to that on any podcast app out there. If you want to listen to my newest Bigfoot podcast called My Bigfoot Sighting, where it's just strictly firsthand accounts, I don't interview anyone, there's no back and forth, it's just 100% story time, where eyewitness after eyewitness comes on and shares their Bigfoot sightings, then you can listen to My Bigfoot Sightings on your favorite podcast app, including iHeartRadio, just like all of my podcasts are also available on iHeartRadio or Spreaker, Spotify, you name the podcast platform, and you can listen that way. And again, the podcast apps, that's the best way to listen to all of my shows. And then last but not least is the new Dogman podcast with fictional stories called Dogman Tales. Again, it's Tales because they are tales. Dogman Tales can also be found on your favorite podcast application. So it makes it really easy to listen to those. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and you want to come on one of my 2 Bigfoot podcasts and share that experience with my listeners, then yeah, the best way to do that, set that up, is to go to mybigfootsighting.com and submit a guest request. If you do that, then I'll contact you about coming on the show. But a requirement is you have to have actually seen a Sasquatch. But there you have it, gentlemen. That's how you can listen to all my podcasts.
That's awesome.
It is. And your voice is so soothing. I mean, I could listen to it all night long.
Well, thank you. It's okay.
Well, maybe you can come back on the show. I'll ask you, I know for sure, in the next few months. But really appreciate you being here tonight.
Yes,
and
thank you, Vic.
It's been a great show. A lot of our viewers enjoyed it, or all of them did, from the comments. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been fun. And of course, if you want me to come back, then yeah, just let me know and we'll get that set up then.
All right.
Sounds great.
You take care.
You have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Great guest.
That was amazing.
Yeah. He's got, I love his voice too.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of make me a little jealous, you know, but, what's crazy is that, you know, he's got a listing in his head of so many different of these encounters.
Yeah.
That he's able to, you know, draw these conclusions on these things. And that's just pretty neat.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, remember, this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, we have a 2-hour show with Harley Owens.
Yes. We got to see him at the Bigfoot conference.
Yeah. From, Bigfoot Reports and Data. He was a speaker in the round table up there at the conference.
Yep.
He's going to be joining us, Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Then also, what we got next? October the 11th, we're going to be at the Knox County Public Library in Farragut talking about the paranormal.
Yep.
Going to be doing a little presentation there.
Then October
23rd, we're going to be at UT, I think. I don't know if it's going to be on campus, but it's going to be
with UT.
Yeah.
It'll be it'll be a 1 hour
presentation.
Yeah. On the paranormal. So definitely look forward to seeing you there. And if you want to see what's next on our shows, you could always go to our Facebook page. Jason lists everything on our Facebook page as far as all of our upcoming shows. You could also visit us on our website at paranormal411.org.
That's right.
Woo. Woo. So you ready?
You ready?
Yeah. Jason Finch says, and Dogman Tales.
Yeah, Dogman Tales. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I listened to some of it today, and it was
Did you?
His voice just telling the story.
That's cool.
It's soothing.
I'll have to ask him if he just comes up with the stories, you know, like, because I know he said that they were tales, so they're stories, but how he comes up with those, that's pretty neat.
All right,
everybody. Remember, you can find us at paranormal411.org. Paranormal 411 on Facebook, YouTube, X, Rumble. Tune in live every Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturdays from 8 to 10. Remember, also on Saturdays from 10 to 11, if you're in the metro Atlanta area, you can catch us on WDJY-FM. That's 99.1 FM. And for listeners outside of Atlanta, you go to WDJYFM.com, or you can go to paranormal411.org and click that link. Remember, we're on Subspace Radio and all major podcast platforms. We do have a book out, East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore Edition 2. That is East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore Edition 2. It is available on Amazon. Or you go to paranormal411.org and click that link. Join us. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
See you Saturday.
Yes.
Have you ever wondered what lurks in the shadows? What secrets the night hides? What strange phenomena might be happening just beyond your perception? Join us as we journey into the world of the paranormal, exploring everything from ghosts and UFOs to cryptids and unexplained occurrences. From haunted houses to all things paranormal, join us in the search for the truth behind the veil. Welcome to Paranormal 411.